The next part we can from how to do a scientific writing, because when student is the time for scientific writing, they also face significant challenges. So what kind of mindset should a student have when beginning a scientific writing?
Well, okay, I'm going to say something which many students may not have the ability to do or the capability, and that is if you want to learn about scientific writing, take a course in it.
Mhm.
And so like, it's an interesting thing in that I talk, most of my students went into industry. And I told them if they really want to go into industry, they probably should get maybe in addition to all the theory on plant breeding and genetics, maybe they should take one course in economics if they haven't. And the reason is when they go to a company, they're going to spend a lot of time talking to the business people, right? I want to release this cultivar. And they're going to ask you, well, is it X? Is it Y? What should we, how do we make money on it? How do we do things like this? I don't expect you to be skilled in business, but I expect you to be able to talk the language to the people that fund you. Okay. If you go into academia and you want to be a teacher, I had no training in teaching. I did a lot of sort of on the job stuff, but if you really want to document that you're going to be a good teacher, go ahead, take a course on how to teach so you're familiar with what teaching is. There's a whole body of knowledge there. I mean, we would never do anything in our life, in our science, where we didn't understand the information. But we make teachers teachers without giving them without having any background, which was, and that's in my case. Hopefully it's better now, but in my case, that was the case. So when it comes to writing science, if you have the opportunity to take a science writing course, do it. That's what I would tell you. They'll tell you the tips.
Yes, so I would like also ask from you about the can you give some advice about the each section of scientific writing like introduction, material, method, result, and discussion? What are the main points students should focus and how we can grab the data from previous articles?
Yeah. So, okay. So, a couple of things. There's a big difference between a literature review, which you often need for a thesis or dissertation, and an introduction. Okay. An introduction for a scientific paper has to be short. I mean, usually it's, I don't know, 500 words, maybe 1,000 words. You have to cover in there the key thing a reader should be looking for is why did you do this research and why is it important and why is it new? I mean, what are you adding? Okay. And then in the materials and methods, it's how you did it. And by the way, the introduction should also include the background information that the way you chose to do your materials and methods is a valid way of doing it. Now, there can be some debate. Um, I'm always of the school, I don't care which method or you used as long as it could answer your question. So you'll sometimes be criticized that you could have done it with this new state-of-the-art technique, but your university or your lab didn't have access to that. But that's not really a relevant question. The relevant question is, did you answer beyond a reasonable doubt the hypothesis you pursued? So a lot of people were using, molecular markers and statistical genetics to answer a question that other people previously answered with, you know, basically statistical genetics without markers. And either one answers the question. Sometimes it may be stronger with molecular markers, but you got the answer, got the same answer. So now when I write a paper, you have to know why you wrote it. And you have to explain to a reader why it's worth their reading, which is why it's nude, what does it add? But the easiest place to start is usually the materials and methods. Why? Because it's defined. You've done your experiment. You know how many lines you used. You know how you analyzed them. You know if you did any assays on them, what the assays were. That's the easy part. So usually you do the materials and methods, and then often you go back to the introduction. Now, the why you should have had written, you can write that, almost from your proposal. Okay. But when it gets into the part of the introduction where you explain the technology you used to answer the why, and that's all in the materials and methods, that's where you would learn from the materials and methods what has to be in the introduction. And then from there you go to the results and discussion. Okay.
And what about the discussion? Which part should be we focus mostly? Because for me and mostly student, the discussion is a very difficult part to write
Yeah.
about.
Well, there's two kinds of papers, and the ones I prefer are the ones where the results and the discussions are combined.
Mhm.
And that's because you can present a result and then you can say why that result is important or what does it mean. The papers I have a little more difficulty with, and just personally me writing, are ones where the results have to be separated from the discussion. Because then you sort of, in a way, the way I describe it is it's like when you present the results, you present like a cadaver that you've cut open and you're looking at the organs. And then in the discussion, you tell them why the spleen is important, why the liver is important. And that, to me, it's much easier to say, here's the results. Wow, look at this. We found the spleen. This is what it does. But when you do that, if you have to, and that's the journal's decision. It's not your decision. Um, you just have to do that. I mean, I guess. And writing the results is the data, and the discussion is your interpretation of your data. And I guess the key thing I would say here is tell the story. Most people don't think of papers as a story, but that's really what it is. And if you look at what books you read and short stories you read and things like this, a paper's really not that much different. You start with an introduction, why it was important, how it does it. You talk about how you did the research. You talk about what you found. And then you talk about why is it relevant back to the reader. And if you can tell a story, that's perfect. And then the other thing, one thing that people in papers often leave off, and this is something where it helps you with the review process, is if there's an obvious question that a reviewer would ask, answer it in the paper. And that's something because as soon as a reviewer reads your paper and says, boy, did they think of this? And they never brought it up, they wonder, okay, they should have probably thought about it. At least in my mind, they should have. But if they read something and they say, well, did they think of this? And then it's presented in the discussion, yes, they have. Then you get a feeling that you have more confidence as a reviewer in what they did.
Okay, thank you very much. Just the session time is only 1 minute left. So very last question and very quick. How we can choose the reference if we didn't find the latest reference or like the relevant, how we can overcome with this? So you can answer like
Yeah.
in a key advice, then we can.
You do the best you can. The,
Mhm.
the key thing is try to stay current, but candidly, many parts of the world don't have great libraries and they can't stay current, and there's a real price wall there. You do the best you can. A good reviewer, if the paper is well written and everything else, will say in the review, one reference that the authors always should be may, want to consider is the following. And I have actually even sent to the editor, here's the paper, here's the PDF of it, and that way, if a person doesn't have access to the latest papers, but there's one that you as a reviewer think is there, you can send it to them. They can read it. They can make the decision if they want to add it. But I really don't like reviewers that don't help a author who may have just overlooked a paper that they may or may not even have access to.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much for giving us the time. Have a lovely day and God bless you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
questions. Have a
Okay.
wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye now.